Maryville University is not just a collegiate team, and I think that label honestly undersells what that roster actually is. Because when you look at this team's results, the players it has, and the way that they draft and play the map, this is a team that has clearly moved past just college dominance and into real Tier 2 contention. They qualified cleanly through open play, and they've already shown strong early results, and statistically, they're one of the most efficient teams in the NACL right now. But what makes this team interesting isn't just that they win and that they're undefeated, it's how they win and how they're undefeated. In the top lane we have Key. Key is the definition of a top laner who came through a development system and not in a bad way. You can see it with how disciplined he is while playing in lane and around the map for his team. And when you look at his champion pool, it tells you everything about how Maryville wants to play around their top side. We see picks like Rumble, Jax, and Sion all coming out, which all play a very different role for the team. He can play carry, he can play teamfight, and he can play frontline. And that's the kind of flexibility you don't see very often in just Tier 2 talent. And he's not here necessarily to just solo carry games for the Maryville roster. He's more of a facilitator for his team, with his overall damage share being relatively low compared to the rest of his roster. And on top of that, his kill share also reflects that. But what he does do for his team is he facilitates the rest of his team to make up that slack by absorbing pressure around the map and allowing his team to exert pressure. The overall online sentiment so far for him is that he just doesn't lose you games. You don't necessarily look for him to win you the game through top lane, but that's okay, that's not what this team needs. In the jungle we have Yuuji. I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that Yuuji is the entire engine of this roster, and statistically it's not even close with the rest of them. He is sitting on a massive KDA with extreme high kill participation, meaning he's involved in almost everything Maryville does across the map, and that lines up perfectly with what you see in game for him. Yuuji tends to play aggressive tempo-focused junglers and is constantly looking for early skirmishes in the river with his mid laner and invades and trying to secure that map control. He really isn't just a farming jungler, he's more of a I'm gonna try to decide the game at 8 minutes type of jungler. And this tracks with his background too, back when he played for the LCS with Team Liquid. He knows exactly what high level jungle gameplay looks like. And from a champion pool perspective, Maryville as a whole has already shown a wide spread of jungle influence compositions with early game heavy setups and strong engage tools that appear frequently in drafts. And I think the key point to focus on is that when Yuuji is ahead, the Maryville roster looks clean, and when he's not, the team kind of slows down. In the mid lane we have Spirax. I think that Spirax is more of a glue for this roster than more people give him credit for. Not because he's the flashiest or boasts the biggest damage numbers, but because he's kind of the bridge for this team between more chaos and structure. And then champion pool wise, Spirax is playing exactly what you would expect from a stabilizing mid laner. He has amazing meta picks like Azir and most control mages who are already showing up with strong win rates and high damage output to the mid to late game. And when you look at his overall stats, it kind of just backs up that he's a strong player overall. He farms well, he damages well, and he has consistent teamfight presence for his team. He is not a roam heavy coin flip mid laner. This is a player who wants to scale, control fights, and give structure to the map for his team, and that's exactly what Maryville needs. Because with Yuuji pushing the pace early, Spirax is the one making sure that the game does not fall apart in those mid-game transitions. And there's a bit of an underrated underlying narrative here for him. Spirax has already had LCS exposure of FlyQuest, and now he's back in the NACL, not as a prospect, but as a player who's trying to prove that he belongs back at that Tier 1 level. And that edge and storyline shows up in the consistency of how he plays. And then in the ADC role we have the man, the myth, the legend, the God Emperor ADC ScaryJerry. I think that he is probably the centerpiece of the Maryville late game, and honestly the entire identity of the team starts to make sense when you look at how they play through ScaryJerry in the bot lane. Statistically, he's putting up some of the strongest numbers on the roster with the highest damage per minute with a strong KDA and massive teamfight impact into that mid to late game. And when you look at the overall champion pool trend for Maryville's roster, you see a heavy emphasis on teamfight oriented compositions focusing on the ADC role. And that tells you everything. This team wants to scale into these late game fights where ScaryJerry can carry the team and they can support him however they can through the draft. The overall online sentiment for him is very different from the top and mid lane. It's louder, more divided, and more emotional. You see a lot of he's too good for the NACL and why isn't he into the LCS? And then there's a flip side of he needs the right system to actually shine. And I think that Maryville might be that system for him to shine and try to go back into that Tier 1 play. Because unlike some of his past teams, this roster is clearly built around enabling him, not just including him on the overall roster. And then in the support role we have Obstinatus. I think that overall Obstinatus is the quiet backbone of the roster, and when you look at the stats, it's kind of insane how efficient he actually is. He has extremely high assist numbers, high kill participation, and low resource usage for the amount of impact he has on the map. And that's exactly what you want from a support in an overall tier 2 team like this. Champion pool wise, Maryville has already shown picks through Obstinatus on Nami and Karma, which lean heavily into enabling the carries like ScaryJerry into controlling these fights. And on engaged champs, he looks just as potent, enabling ScaryJerry and the rest of his team into these skirmishes and fights through the early, mid, and late game. He's not just an engage first support like so many others in tier 2, he's also a scaling and setup support. Obstinatus is playing to enhance this team, not just dominate the lane and then go into obscurity later on. And this synergy that he has with ScaryJerry, enhancing him into being the star carry for the team, is a huge part of why the spot lane works for Maryville. Maryville has already played over 20 unique champions in just their first handful of games, which is insane for early split diversity in tier 2. And this tells you two important things, that they're flexible and that they understand drafts at a very high level. And even with that flexibility, their identity is very clear. The early game, Yuuji controls the tempo, mid game, Spirax stabilizes, and in the late game, ScaryJerry carries. And then everything else fits in around this core. This team can play scaling, this team can play skirmish, and they can draft for a team fight or a side lane. And most importantly, they execute on every draft they draft. The main concern I have for this team is that they're still very momentum based. Most of their success comes from getting ahead early and then staying ahead throughout the game. But if they fall behind against top teams like NRG or CCG, the question becomes, do they really have a true fallback plan? And right now, it's really not proven yet. Maryville is coming into this scene proving that they're no longer just a collegiate dynasty in the CLOL. They are a legitimate NACL contender with proven players, a clear system, and one of the most cohesive identities in the league. And the next step for them is going to be the hardest one, because it's not about proving that you can win games, it's about proving that you can win even when things go wrong. And if Maryville can figure that out, they're going to be a team that's not only tier 2 ready, but they're also going to be LCS ready. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and then comment down below who your favorite player on the Maryville roster is. Thanks for watching.